about elimination. Before thinking about elimination, what you should do is do your research first. Don't even look at the options. Do your research first. How do you do your research, Usha?
But
Yeah,
to locate where in the text the question is.
exactly. And try to understand the question before looking at the options. Because even if you look at the options directly, it becomes very difficult to figure out which one would be the right one. See, this is an assumption question. Something is false, but they are saying if true, which means, it's not true. But if it is true, which finding of a survey of the general population would most undermine the author's interpretation of some study? So we need to understand what was his interpretation, and uh, finding of a survey of which finding of a survey. So if this is found to be true, then the survey would go wrong. Undermine means that, right? Whatever are the results of the survey. So let's try to understand what survey is going on here. And I wrote these lines 54 to 64 because those are the lines where this survey is discussed. So I would like you to read this paragraph and tell me what's going on here. So Usha, if you can read, Mahi and Vandana also, if you can just read this paragraph to yourself and tell us what is the story here.
Which paragraph?
Lines 54 to line 64. So this paragraph. Yeah. Yeah, so have you read that? Usha, are you ready? If you can explain what's going on in this paragraph.
I think it's basically trying to say that you have to constantly do kind acts for the lasting results.
Exactly. If you space it out, the results are not that pronounced because you tend to forget and there's no effective or net increase in happiness if the acts of happiness are all spaced out, right? They are supposed to be frequent, as you rightly said. So, what would contradict, what would undermine this study? If you ask yourself, even without going to the question, what would undermine this whole study? What would prove it wrong? Usha, what would prove it wrong?
If your happiness increased, even though you weren't like constantly helping people.
Perfect. Now, when you have this kind of clarity in your mind that this is the right answer, and then if you go to the questions, sorting out the wrong options would be so easy, isn't it? So
Yeah.
now if you look at all the options, isn't D the best choice? Let's just read D for the sake of it first. Like occasional altruistic acts result in long lasting increase in personal happiness of those who perform them. If this happens, then the study gets undermined, that it is not supposed to be infrequent. Even if they are infrequent, you get the same kind of results. Yeah. So the strategy that you're supposed to use is you have to have absolute clarity in your mind what the study was before you can select or eliminate something. And of course, sometimes the questions themselves are a little tweaked, like the way this particular question is. What would undermine the study, which means we are looking for a negative evidence which will prove the study wrong. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So this is how you are supposed to reason out, Instead of looking at the options first, it is advisable to go back to the passage and have clarity about the content first by paraphrasing it, by reading it again, by putting it in your own words. Yeah? Like, let's just quickly look at all other options also. What would undermine the study is in my mind. The happiness boost associated with altruistic acts remain constant when more than 5 altruistic acts are performed in a single day. This becomes too specific. They are not talking about 5 or 6, and they're saying it remains constant. So by doing lots of altruistic acts, if it remains constant, we don't know whether that is right. I mean, it's a tertiary inference of what is there. If you do lots of acts, your actually, happiness should rise. If it remains constant, it is a very strong bait, though. I mean, if by doing infrequent acts, there is no net increase in happiness, the corollary of it would be that if you do a lot of altruistic acts in the same day, your happiness should increase. But if it is not increasing, then it would undermine the study, right?
Yeah.
So can you see that A is a very strong bait? Like
Yeah, I could.
it could be one of the right answers. So when you do it, if I were to do it, I'll say maybe A could be a very good choice actually. While all altruistic acts confer a happiness boost, altruistic acts that lead to immediate benefits confer. So they are talking about the quality of altruistic act. They have not really discussed about quality of altruistic act anywhere. So this definitely deserves to be rejected, right? The amount of happiness people feel as a result of performing altruistic acts increases with the effort those acts require. Well, they do not talk about effort anywhere. So this is also out of question, out of scope. So now the battle is between A and D. And now D is a direct statement. This talks about infrequent altruistic acts also leading to higher happiness, is what the paragraph talking about. So that is why D is a better choice. So this is how you can approach these questions. And of course, this question would anyone, if even if an expert does it, he would spend some time on it. Otherwise, he would go wrong or she would go wrong, isn't it? Because the
Yeah.
question is tweaked. It's not a very straight question the way those word-based questions are. There is a test called as GRE and these GMAT, these kind of questions. So there is something called as analysis of statements. Those kind of questions come there. It's of that sort, which statement would undermine the given conclusion. So it's like that. You have concluded something and you want to undermine it. So what would undermine it? This finding would undermine it, isn't it?
Yeah.
So this is a good question, and yeah, this requires I mean, good in the sense that it requires some analysis before we can reach to the conclusion. Good, you've done great. Okay, let's go to the next one. So Usha, which one was the next one which you got wrong?
I think it's number 19.
19. So let's look at that as well. 19. Based on the information in the passage, it can reasonably be inferred that majority of survey respondents is represented in figure 1. Now don't read these options first. Just try to fill yourself with the context. So majority of survey respondents in figure 1. So let's go there. Let's figure out where is figure 1 and what is the majority there. So this is the majority, which is 92%, right? Majority of respondents in figure 1. So this is the majority. Probably
Yeah.
it could be combined also. volunteering enriches my sense of purpose in my life. So most of the respondents are responding to this. So, if we don't read the options, it saves our time and it makes us very clear and we know what is there. So these guys are saying that something related to purpose in life, sense of purpose was enriched. I mean, they experienced an enrichment in their sense of purpose. Okay, fine. So I fill this information that those who are volunteering regularly or not regularly, whatever it is, it's just that those who go into some kind of voluntary activity gives them a sense of purpose for life. Okay, fine. Now, if I go back to that question, which was question number 19, and I look at the options, may have experienced decrease in level. Oh, this is different actually. Based on the information of the passage, based on information the passage, it can reasonably infer that, okay, so let's see. In fact, so this will require a little bit of digging. When I look at the options, they are talking about hormones and something, always higher and all this, which means the answer is not here. Now, how to figure this? Oh, they have an evidence also associated. So this is pretty much an evidence question. Did you get 20th right?
Yeah, I got the evidence right, but for 19, I put D.
All right, all right. So let's go to the evidence straight away. You figured out the evidence based on the previous questions because up until the previous one, we already reached to like line 65 and 68, I can see are already discussed. So if you got the evidence right, let's straight away read the evidence. So, but then sense of purpose. In the passage, it can reasonably infer that majority of survey respondents. So it's not just about those numbers, which means I was reading it incorrectly. It's not just about that 95% who are saying that they have found. So majority would like constitute most of them. It's not just about that 95% which was there in figure 1, 92%. So all these people are saying that they have some kind of positive effect. So why are they getting positive effect is the question. And if I go to that evidence, which lines were those? I think last few lines where they are talking about hormones and something. Here it is. So can you just read this and tell me what's going on in these lines? So if I have to write 3 words here, I'll write purpose, and then I'll write increase in oxytocin and decrease in stress hormones, isn't it? That's what
Yeah.
pretty much. So increase in good hormones and decrease in bad hormones is what is happening. You get purpose. It does talk about purpose. Doing something significant means like you get some purpose, you get that sense of accomplishment. But this is what it is saying here. It increases good hormones, decreases bad hormones, all that. Okay. So if that is the case, then for question number 19, so Usha, what is your sequence of answering the question? I mean, what is the strategy that you follow? Do you do the way we are doing right now? That you do not read the options, you go to the passage, you do a little research the way we are doing right now, and then,
Yeah, I'm doing it that way.
okay, so what was your answer for this one?
I put D.
Always have higher level of oxytocin. See, what is the problem with this?
It
This
says
particular,
all.
yeah, this particular word always, it makes it very, very all or none kind of thing. So if there is one exception, this statement will go wrong. Had it been put in a little generic fashion, it would have been better. Let's go to the passage and let's see if there's something they have given to eliminate always. You see, look at this. Plausible chemicals. Plausible means it is possible. It's not a guarantee. Social psychologists, this gentleman from this place, may signal our bodies to release plausible chemicals. Plausible is maybe these chemicals such as
Wait,
oxytocin.
that says pleasurable.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm reading it incorrectly. Okay. So look at this. So it is not 100%. It may signal. He's not saying signals. Helping others may signal our bodies to release this, which means it's not always the case. Again, look at this, may mute. So this is pretty much a tone question, isn't it? If you look at the tone of all these statements, it's all like probable. But if you change it or if you compare it with always, it's actually contradictory, isn't it? So had it been may or a possible increase in oxytocin, this statement would have been right. Look at this, the way they catch you. Otherwise, D is a good choice if you look at it from, and there's an evidence for D also that oxytocin gets released. But always have higher levels of oxytocin is like too exclusive, isn't it?
Yeah, I see.
Yeah. So this is how you can eliminate. And may have, look at this, the correct answer has the same word. May have experienced a decrease in level of certain hormones after volunteering. Can you see the subtle differences in the choices and how careful we are supposed to be? And it's that we have to understand the tone of the option, because always and may have has a very large difference in tone. This is like it's a promise, it's a guarantee, would always have, and may have is like a possibility. And that's what it's just like the tone matches the options, isn't it? So there are four things we discuss about: scope, tone, organization, and purpose. So whenever you read a passage, these are the four things you should take care of. STOP. Scope is like, what is the scope of it? The scope is a scientific study which is trying to find out an association between altruism and happiness. Tone, it's very scientific and direct. They're talking about facts and figures. And at times it is probable, like in the last paragraph. How is it organized? They talk about the experiments first, and at the end, some results and graphs. Purpose, again, the same. To actually, purpose comes at the end, which means after the whole study, they were able to establish some kind of association between altruistic acts and happiness. So scope, tone, organization, and purpose is something that you should focus on. And yeah, I think so. This one again a good question. There is just a nuance and a very subtle difference between the two choices. Hundana, you got this one right?
No.
Oh, so you are hiding, huh? You're not telling.
No, I was just listening.
All right. What about you, Mahi?
I didn't get this right either.
Oh, okay. So this one caught you. And was it that you all selected D for the option? Mahi,
I did.
okay. What about you, Hundana?
I actually selected C and then the evidence was wrong too. So then I realized that it's not just about disagreeing with the statements.
Oh, you went too far. Live longer.
Yeah.
Okay, so live longer is totally out of scope, because here the
Yeah.
discussion was more about the hormones which get released and all. Good. So this was again a good question, and you understood, you learned something. See, these are some very important learnings. I'll send this recording to you. Please watch it 2, 3 times so that it gets permanently fixed in your mind. How to analyze a question. It's not about how many test papers you do, isn't it? It's how many questions you understand and how you refine your techniques of getting the right answer. Even with 10 questions, you can understand the whole lot of techniques, and then you can check how those techniques help you in other questions, isn't it? So people say, I have to do 20 test papers before the exam or 30 test papers. It won't help. It's like by doing 5, 6 test papers, if you are able to refine your techniques, it yields more results. Okay, which one was the next one after this? So whenever you get these kind of words, you can always, I will not say you can always eliminate them, but the probability of them being right is too low because these words make it all very exclusive. Always means if there's just one exception, the whole statement will go wrong, isn't it? I always wear a white shirt. So in an year, if on one day, if I wear some other shirt, this statement would prove wrong, right? So always is like all or none. And there has to be a strong evidence to prove it. Okay, so let's go to the next passage now. What was it about? What was the story, if you can tell me? Hundana, what was the story? You can take a minute to read and tell us what was the story about this one. Anyone, if you remember a bit, you can spend some time reading it and then we can discuss the passage and the questions.
If I remember, I think it just talks about mainly about like the bionic leaf and how like you can get like energy from it, like, and it talks about like the whole process and chemicals and everything.
Exactly. So this is pretty much a science passage, and the structure of a science passage is pretty much the same. It talks about some new invention or a new discovery and the mechanism of it, how it helps you to do something in an easy way, or how it makes your life easier. And then it talks about its implications. Like, for example, in this case, they say that the same bionic leaf, which is used for generating power, can be used to produce drugs also. So at the end, they talk about the possibility of producing drugs with the help of bionic leaf. Yeah. So let's go to the questions now. It will always start with the discovery, then the process, and the implications of that. All right. So which questions from this one? All questions were correct, Usha?
For 23, I got D.
Yeah, D, B as in D or B?
D.
23D is correct.
Oh,
Isn't it correct? 23D. You want me to check
oh
again?
yeah, I just corrected mine wrong.
Yeah, this one, 23 is D here, the second row, the second column, I mean. Yeah, okay. What about
Yeah,
Mahi? Yeah,
I got that one wrong. I put A.
23. The first paragraph implies that Silver and this guy research was motivated in part. So why did they do this research? By a desire to address which problem? So yeah, don't read the options, go to the paragraph. Let's try to understand what was the problem. So if we read the paragraph, do we get some clue about the problem? Yeah, so what was the problem they were trying to address?
I think I was trying to create energy sources, like
Specifically for remote locales in the developing world. So remote
yeah,
locales would be the places where conventional sources of energy could not be used. Like if you talk about Antarctica or some hill stations where you cannot have these wires. So can there be a source of electricity at a place where you cannot have the conventional sources? So remote locales would mean that. So that was the problem they were trying to solve. Okay, so if we go to this question now, this was question number
23.
23. Some communities lack adequate access to reliable energy source. Many developing countries lack natural resources that are convenient. What was your answer?
I put A.
Yeah. See, this is how they play, you know. It says developing countries and they say developing world. So developing world and developing countries are two different entities. Developing world pretty much means the whole world. And developing countries are those countries which are marked as developing countries which are not yet developed. Can you see that?
Okay.
So they play with words and we sometimes get caught into them. Look at the remote locales in the developing world. Doesn't mean developing countries only. It's pretty much the whole world. Whereas the question, I mean the statement A, so this was a bait. Can you see this? Which question? No, this is a bait.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people would get caught into this. Many developing countries lack natural resources that are convertible to fuel. So yeah, and all other options, and after that, D would be the right one. So that's generally the case. And yeah, they've given the lines also, it seems. Yeah. So these are the lines. And of course, whenever you do these questions, it makes sense to go to the lines first.
Okay.
Okay. So applying these techniques, your homework is do the same test once again. Okay, so let's see how much you score in the same test when we check it day after tomorrow. Let's see which other questions were incorrect. So this time you should get 52 on 52. Okay, tell me which passage is the okay. Any other question from this one first? Are we good with this? Can we move to the next one? Say yes or no. All questions correct up to 27?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So what, no, not 27 actually, up to 31. Mahi, all questions correct up to 31?
Yeah.
Okay, so what about the next one? This one it seems to be a political one. So what was it? Did we did this or not? In our class, did we discuss this one?
We went over a part of it.
Okay, so yeah, basically two different people discussing about freedom and all it from two different perspectives. One is a South African, the other guy is a Brit, and he has a different perspective towards freedom. Okay, any questions from this one, from 32 onwards till 40? Yeah, 40, or all through? Do you have any questions, Usha and Hundana, or all questions correct from this one?
We checked it last time, so
We did it. Okay. Okay, what about this one, this moon one?
I got number 44 wrong.
So 44 is here. It can reasonably be inferred from the passage, which means this is not something which is directly said. The idea that moon was completely aided was reinforced in part because now I would try to figure out where the answer is by looking at, oh, they have got line reference here. So did you was 45 correct for you? Usha, you got 45th correct?
Yeah, I got the evidence part right.
Okay, so if you go to 23 to 25, what is the evidence there? Let's read. So I actually, in order to understand the context, I may read a few more lines. I'm reading from 11th itself. It says, it's a funny thing about conventional wisdom, though. Eventually, someone will challenge what everyone else knows to be true, and once in a while, something really interesting will be found. So, okay, fine. So, conventional wisdom is challenged here. In 94, a single, some kind of mission produced radar measurements to tell that there is ice on moon. Okay, though many planetary scientists were unconvinced. So, you know, up until now they believed there wasn't any ice, but then some people came up with the evidence, and the conventional wisdom was still believed by some. 4 years later, some other kind of mission found concentration of hydrogen atoms, and hence possibly water ice or water containing minerals. So they found hydrogen, and water pretty much has hydrogen. So they said if hydrogen is there, there must be water near the cobalt. Still, many experts pointed to implanted hydrogen ions from sun, solar, wind as a more likely source of the signal. I don't understand this line. Can you please explain? These lines, the ones which are underlined, still many experts, da da da. Pointed to implanted hydrogen. What is this? Hundana, can you please explain these lines?
It's basically just like contradicting, like just um they are like still going against like the conventional wisdom.
So this hydrogen, here they are talking about hydrogen specifically, and they're saying that this hydrogen is not native to moon. It has actually come from sun. So this hydrogen is not a conclusive evidence. If you find hydrogen on moon, and if this hydrogen has come from sun, you cannot conclude that there is water there, or moon has the hydrogen to create its water. Implanted hydrogen ions from the sun, solar, wind as a more likely source. So, no, this is not the evidence of water. It has come from somewhere else. So these hydrogen ions are not from moon itself. So that's what these lines mean. And if you go to which question was that? Yeah, this one, 44. So it can reasonably infer from the passage that the idea that moon was completely arid was reinforced in part. What do you mean by arid? Does it mean dry? Usha, arid means dry or what?
Yeah.
Yeah, arid is made from air. So only air is there, which means it is dry. It doesn't have water. Was reinforced in part because, so we are looking for an evidence which kind of supports the idea that moon is dry. Evidence that might have contradicted this notion could be explained in another way. Oh, how, I mean, indirectly have they framed this statement? Might have contradicted means presence of hydrogen can be explained in another way. In another way, what is another way? Yeah, Usha, what is another way?
I don't. It's like another way.
No, another way means what? What exactly does it refer to? What is the another? What is
Oh, like there's like an alternate way.
so? What is that alternate way?
I don't know.
So hydrogen came from sun. You know, evidence that might have contradicted this notion. Which notion? That it is not arid. That it is arid. Actually, we are contradicting that it is arid. Could be explained in another way. Which means so. What is happening here? Presence of hydrogen is quoted as an evidence that oh, moon has water. Why? Because there's hydrogen present there.
Yeah.
But there is a contradictory explanation to this hydrogen, that this hydrogen is not native to moon. It has come from sun. So you cannot say that moon has water just because it has hydrogen. This was quite again a very, I mean, the way it is worded makes it very difficult to understand. Vandana, you got this one right?
No, I didn't get it right.
Okay, what about you, Mahi?
No.
All right. So you got this. See, I write this. Can you see this war? What is the meaning of war? War is worth a revision. So whenever there is a question which requires a little deep thinking, and I also don't get right in the first instance, I write it war there. You know. So this question definitely required more analysis, and the way it is worded is very indirect, evidence that might have contradicted this notion could be explained in another way. How would you make out what is the meaning of this statement unless you go there? Can you see it now? Usha, does this make sense to you now?
Yes, sir.
So these questions are the ones which definitely require a little deeper understanding and reading the passage. Okay, so this was this. Any other question from this one? Okay, so your homework is to do the same test once again and do writing as well from this one. But pretty much the focus is on reading, and we want to see when we do the same test the second time, how many questions we get them right. All right. The day after tomorrow, when we meet, I want you to be ready with the same test paper once again. Because reading them once again will give you a very different perspective. And it might happen that the questions you got wrong right in the first attempt, you may go wrong on them. So there could be some differences on that. So let's see how you do it. Your task is to do the same test paper once again, and we'll check it together. Yeah, but yeah.